The thunderous crack of lightning split the sky as Olivia Mitchell clutched her skirts, ankle-deep in the rapidly rising muddy water. What had begun as a light spring rain had transformed into nature's fury in mere minutes, turning the dry creek bed beside their wagon train camp into a raging torrent that now threatened to devour everything in its path. Arizona Territory, 1878. The journey west had promised a new beginning, far from the stifling confines of Philadelphia society and the whispers that followed her father's financial ruin. But now, as the flood waters surged around her, Olivia wondered if she'd made a fatal mistake, moved to higher ground. The wagon master's desperate shout barely carried over the roar of the deluge. Olivia stumbled forward, the water now at her knees. The other families scrambled to salvage what they could, hitching terrified horses to wagons, mothers clutching children to their chests. Her uncle's wagon sat partially submerged, the oxen bellowing in fear as they strained against their harnesses. "Uncle Frederick," she called, scanning the chaos for his familiar figure. He had been her guardian since her parents' deaths, her only remaining family, the reason she'd agreed to this westward journey to his promised homestead near Tombstone. A wall of water, 6 feet high and carrying debris from upstream, crashed toward them without warning. Olivia heard screams, saw bodies thrown like rag dolls as the flash flood slammed into the camp. The ground beneath her feet dissolved, and she was suddenly airborne, then submerged, the world a churning brown void. Her lungs burned as she fought to the surface, gasping and choking. The current dragged her downstream, away from the shouts that grew fainter behind her. A massive branch struck her shoulder, spinning her around. By some miracle, she managed to grab it, using it as a makeshift raft as the flood carried her farther from the wagon train. The roiling waters slammed her into something solid, a cottonwood tree, its roots partially exposed by the erosion but somehow standing firm against the torrent. Olivia abandoned the branch and wrapped her arms around the tree trunk, her sodden skirts pulling at her like anchors. The flood waters rushed past on either side, carrying fragments of wagons, supplies, and heaven forbid, perhaps people. Minutes stretched into an hour as she clung there, her strength waning. The rain continued to fall, though the initial surge had passed. Darkness began to settle across the landscape, and Olivia's hope dwindled with the fading light. Her fingers, raw and bleeding from clutching the rough bark, threatened to give way. "Hello, anyone there?" A deep male voice cut through the constant rush of water. Olivia lifted her head, straining to see through her matted hair and the gathering dusk. "Here," she tried to call, but her voice emerged as little more than a croak. "I'm here," she tried again, louder this time. A figure appeared on the ridgeline above, silhouetted against the stormy sky. He led a horse carefully down the muddy slope toward the water's edge. "Hold on, madam," he shouted. "Don't let go." As if she had a choice, Olivia thought bitterly, summoning her last reserves of strength to maintain her grip on the tree. The stranger removed his hat and duster, tying a rope around his waist. The other end he secured to his horse's saddle. "I'm coming in after you," he called, wading into the still dangerous current. The water reached his chest as he fought his way to her tree, his movements powerful and determined. When he reached her, Olivia could see his face clearly, for the first time tanned and weathered beneath a shock of dark blonde hair, with eyes the color of the sky after a storm. Not much older than her own, 22 years, perhaps. "Name's Adam Carson," he said, his voice steady despite the rushing water. "I've got you now." He wrapped one strong arm around her waist. "Let go of the tree, I've got you." Trusting him was her only option. Olivia released her death grip on the cottonwood and sagged against him. Together with Adam pulling on the rope and his horse backing up on the bank, They made their way through the swirling waters to safety. Once on solid ground, Olivia's legs gave way. Adam caught her before she fell, lifting her easily into his arms. "My camp's not far," he said. "You need dry clothes and a fire before hypothermia sets in." "The wagon train," she managed through chattering teeth. "My uncle will look for them at first light," Adam promised, setting her gently on his horse before mounting behind her. "But right now, you need to get warm." Olivia leaned back against his solid chest, too exhausted to argue. The rhythmic motion of the horse beneath them and the warmth of the man behind her lulled her into a state between wakefulness and sleep. She barely registered their arrival at a small cabin tucked among a stand of juniper trees. Adam carried her inside and set her down on a wooden chair before quickly building up a fire in the stone hearth. The cabin was simple but sturdy. One main room with a curtained-off area she presumed was for sleeping, a table with 2 chairs, cooking implements hanging from hooks, and shelves lined with supplies. "I've got some clothes that might work," Adam said, disappearing behind the curtain. He returned with a flannel shirt and a pair of pants. "They'll be too big, but they're dry." He handed them to her along with a blanket. "I'll wait outside while you change." Once alone, Olivia struggled out of her sodden dress, corset, and petticoats. Her fingers were numb and clumsy, but she managed to don the offered garments, rolling up the sleeves and pant legs. The masculine scent of leather and pine clung to the fabric, not unpleasantly. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders for good measure. "You can come in," she called, and Adam ducked back through the doorway, a bundle of firewood in his arms. "Better?" he asked, adding logs to the growing flames. "Much, thank you." Olivia moved closer to the fire, extending her hands toward its warmth. "I'm Olivia Mitchell. I was traveling with my uncle's wagon train, headed for Tombstone." Adam nodded, hanging a kettle over the fire. "The Sawyer train. They usually come through this time of year." "Yes, that's the one. You think," she couldn't finish the thought. "Flash floods are dangerous, but people survive them," Adam said, reading her concern. "Wagons can be replaced. The train might have moved to higher ground." His words were meant to comfort, but Olivia knew the reality could be much worse. She'd seen the power of that wall of water firsthand. "How did you find me?" she asked. Adam measured coffee into the pot. "I was tracking a mountain lion that's been bothering my cattle, saw the storm coming and was heading back when I heard what sounded like someone calling. Followed the sound to the creek." He looked at her with newfound respect. "Most people wouldn't have had the strength to hold on that long." "I didn't have much choice," Olivia said with a wan smile. "Still." Adam poured the coffee into 2 tin cups and handed one to her. "Takes grit." They sat in companionable silence as the fire crackled, and the rain continued its steady rhythm on the roof. Olivia's thoughts returned to the wagon train, to her uncle, to the other families. Had any of them survived? Would she be entirely alone in this rugged territory? "Tomorrow," Adam said, interrupting her dark thoughts, "we'll ride to where the train was camped, see what we can find. For tonight, you take the bed, I'll sleep by the fire." "I couldn't possibly." "You can and you will," Adam said firmly. "You've been through an ordeal. Rest is what you need now." Too exhausted to argue, Olivia nodded her thanks. Behind the curtain, she found a narrow but comfortable bed with a quilt that smelled of sunshine and sage. She slipped beneath it, still wearing Adam's clothes, and despite her worry, fell immediately into a deep sleep. Morning came with clear skies and birdsong. Olivia woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where she was until the events of the previous day came rushing back. She found Adam already awake, frying bacon on the stove. "Good morning," he said, glancing up as she emerged from behind the curtain. "There's water in the basin if you want to wash up. Your dress is hanging outside, mostly dry now, though worse for wear." "Thank you," Olivia said, acutely aware of her disheveled appearance. She used the basin of cool water to wash her face and hands, then attempted to bring order to her tangled hair, using Adam's simple comb. After a breakfast of bacon, biscuits, and more coffee, they set out on horseback. Adam on his sturdy buckskin gelding and Olivia riding a gentle mare he called Juniper. Her dress, though stained and torn in places, was wearable again, though she'd abandoned her ruined corset and wore only her chemise beneath it. They followed the creek upstream, the evidence of the flood's destruction growing more apparent with every mile. Uprooted trees, deposits of mud and debris, and the occasional forlorn personal item, a child's doll, a cooking pot, a water-damaged Bible, told the story of the devastation. When they reached the site where the wagon train had camped, Olivia's heart sank. What had been a grassy clearing beside the normally docile creek was now a mud-filled depression littered with broken wagon parts, scattered supplies, and the carcasses of drowned oxen. "Uncle Frederick," she called, dismounting to search the area. "Anyone?" Adam joined her, methodically checking each piece of wreckage. "Looks like most of the wagons were swept downstream," he said grimly. "But I'm not seeing." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "There are no human remains here." "That's a good sign." Olivia nodded, clinging to that slim hope. Perhaps they managed to reach higher ground after all. They continued searching, following the path of destruction downstream. A mile later they found the first wagon, half buried in mud, its canvas covering torn away. Two more appeared further on, one overturned, the other lodged against a rock outcropping. Near the third wagon, they found survivors, a family of 4 huddled beneath a makeshift shelter of wagon canvas and branches. The mother cradled a baby to her chest while the father tended a small fire. A young boy of about 6 sat nearby, his eyes wide and shell-shocked. "Mrs. Mitchell," the woman exclaimed upon seeing Olivia. "Oh, thank the Lord! We thought you'd been lost in the flood, Mrs. Cooper." Olivia dismounted quickly and rushed to the family. "I'm so relieved to see you all safe." "Have you seen my uncle, or any of the others?" Mrs. Cooper shook her head sadly. "We got separated from the main group when the waters hit. Mr. Cooper managed to cut our oxen free just in time and we scrambled up the ridge, but the wagon—" She gestured to the wreckage nearby. "We heard there might be others who made it about 2 miles downstream," Mr. Cooper added, eyeing Adam with curiosity. "This is Mr. Carson," Olivia introduced. "He found me clinging to a tree in the flood and saved my life." Adam tipped his hat to the couple. "Let's get you folks to my cabin," he said. "It's a tight fit, but better than out here. Then I'll continue searching for the others." With the Coopers safely installed at Adam's cabin, he and Olivia continued their search. By mid-afternoon, they'd located 3 more groups of survivors, including the wagon master, Mr. Sawyer, who had managed to lead several families to safety on higher ground. "Your uncle was helping the Wilsons with their broken axle when the flood hit," Sawyer told Olivia, his weathered face grim. "Last I saw, their wagon was being carried off. Some folks are searching that direction." He pointed southeast, where the creek curved toward a series of low hills. Hope warring with dread, Olivia and Adam rode in that direction. The destruction gradually lessened as the floodwaters had spread out across a wider plain, depositing their deadly cargo more sparsely. It was Adam who spotted the figure propped against a juniper tree, hat pulled low over his face. "There," he said, pointing. "Someone's there." They approached cautiously. The man didn't move at their approach, and Olivia feared the worst until she saw the slight rise and fall of his chest. "Uncle Frederick," she cried, sliding from her horse before Adam could help her down. She rushed to the older man's side, falling to her knees beside him. Frederick Mitchell stirred, blinking up at his niece with confusion that quickly turned to joy. "Livy, is it really you?" His voice was weak, and Olivia noticed with alarm the makeshift bandage wrapped around his thigh, stained with blood. "I'm here, Uncle. You're going to be all right." She looked to Adam, who was already examining the wound. "Nasty gash," Adam said. "But clean through the muscle, no bone damage that I can tell. He's lost blood, though." "The Wilsons?" Frederick asked weakly. "We haven't found them yet," Olivia said, "but many others survived. Mr. Sawyer is organizing everyone." "Their wagon broke apart," Frederick said, wincing as Adam tightened the bandage. "I grabbed onto a tree like this one, saw Mrs. Wilson and the children climb onto some rocks downstream, but I couldn't reach them. Mr. Wilson." He shook his head sadly. Adam fashioned a travois from branches and his bedroll to transport Frederick back to his cabin. By the time they returned, more survivors had gathered there, drawn by word that Adam's place had become a makeshift refuge. 23 people had survived out of the original 37 in the wagon train. Over the next several days, the survivors worked together to recover what supplies they could and decide on their next steps. Some, like the Coopers, chose to continue to Tombstone once Mr. Cooper traded labor for a replacement wagon from a nearby ranch. Others, having lost everything, decided to return east. Frederick's wound became infected despite Olivia's careful attention. By the end of the week, he was delirious with fever, his legs swollen and hot to the touch. "We need a doctor," Olivia told Adam, her voice tight with worry. "Is there one in Tombstone?" Adam nodded. "Dr. Goodfellow, good man, patched me up once after a run-in with rustlers." "But Tombstone's a 2-day ride, and your uncle—" "I know," Olivia said, her eyes filling with tears. "He might not have 2 days." Adam laid a hand on her shoulder. "I'll go. You stay with him. I can make it in a day if I ride hard and the weather holds." Before dawn the next morning, Adam set out for Tombstone, promising to return with the doctor as quickly as possible. Olivia spent the day bathing her uncle's forehead with cool water, changing his bandages, and trying to get him to drink the broth Mrs. Cooper prepared. By nightfall, Frederick's condition had worsened. He no longer recognized Olivia, calling her by her mother's name, rambling about events from decades past. Olivia sat beside him through the night, holding his hand, praying for Adam's swift return. The second day dragged on with agonizing slowness. Olivia refused food, focusing all her attention on keeping her uncle comfortable. As the sun began to set, the sound of approaching horses brought her to her feet. Adam burst through the door, followed by an older man with a silver beard carrying a black medical bag. "Doctor." "Goodfellow," Adam introduced quickly, leading him to Frederick's bedside. The doctor's examination was thorough and swift. "Gangrene," he said grimly. "It's spread too far up the leg." He looked at Olivia with compassion. "I'm sorry, Miss Mitchell, but we'll need to amputate to save his life." Olivia swayed on her feet, and Adam's strong arm wrapped around her waist to steady her. "Is there no other way?" she whispered. "None," the doctor said firmly. "And we must act now." What followed was the most harrowing experience of Olivia's life. The cabin was cleared of everyone except the doctor, his assistant who had accompanied them, Adam, and Olivia. Frederick was given laudanum and whiskey, then held down as Dr. Goodfellow performed the grisly but necessary surgery. Olivia refused to leave, assisting the doctor by handing him instruments, holding bandages, and wiping away the blood. Adam stayed at Frederick's head, speaking reassuring words and occasionally catching Olivia's eye with looks of admiration for her courage. When it was finally over, Frederick lay unconscious but alive, his left leg now ending just above the knee. Dr. Goodfellow cleaned his instruments while giving Olivia instructions for her uncle's care. "The first 48 hours are critical," he said, "if infection sets in again." He didn't need to finish the thought. "I understand," Olivia said, her face pale but resolute. "Thank you, doctor." After the doctor and his assistant retired to a tent outside for the night, Olivia sank into a chair beside her uncle's bed, exhaustion finally claiming her. Adam brought her a cup of coffee and sat beside her. "You were incredible today," he said softly. "I did what needed doing," she replied, sipping the strong, bitter liquid gratefully. "Not everyone could have," Adam pointed out. "Most women I know would have fainted at the first sight of blood." "I'm not most women," Olivia said with a tired smile. "My father made sure of that. He believed women should be educated in more than just needlepoint and piano playing." Adam studied her with new interest. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Olivia said, a shadow crossing her face. "Until the railroad investments failed and he—" She shook her head, unwilling to speak of her father's suicide, the scandal that had followed, the way Philadelphia society had turned its back on their family. "Uncle Frederick was kind enough to take me in, to bring me west for a fresh start." "And now you're caring for him," Adam observed. "Life has a way of coming full circle." They sat together through the night, taking turns watching over Frederick. By morning his fever had broken, and he opened his eyes with clarity for the first time in days. "Livy," he called weakly. "I'm here, Uncle," she said, taking his hand. Frederick's gaze moved down to where the blanket lay flat where his left leg should have been. Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by resignation. "So that's how it is," he murmured. "Dr. Goodfellow saved your life," Olivia said gently. Frederick nodded once, then noticed Adam standing nearby. "You're the one who found my niece," he said, "and brought the doctor. I owe you a debt I can never repay." Adam shook his head. "No debt between neighbors, Frederick questioned. "My ranch is just 10 miles from the land you purchased outside Tombstone," Adam explained. "When Olivia mentioned your name, I remembered the sale." "Pritchard's old place, right?" Frederick nodded, surprise evident on his face. "It's good land," Adam continued. "Good water source, decent grazing. Needs work, but it has potential." Over the next 2 weeks, Frederick's strength gradually returned. The other survivors from the wagon train had moved on, either continuing to their destinations or returning east. Only the Mitchells remained at Adam's cabin, as Frederick wasn't yet strong enough to travel. During this time, Olivia and Adam fell into a comfortable routine. She took over the cooking and helped tend his small vegetable garden, while he handled his ranch work and began crafting a wooden crutch for Frederick. In the evenings, they would sit on the cabin's small porch, talking about their lives, their hopes, their disappointments. Olivia learned that Adam had come west 5 years earlier, after serving briefly in the army. He'd worked as a cowhand on various ranches before saving enough to purchase his own modest spread. He ran about 50 head of cattle, did some hunting and trapping in the winter, and occasionally worked as a guide for travelers or a scout for the cavalry at nearby Fort Huachuca. In turn, she told him about her life in Philadelphia, her education at a progressive girls' school, her love of books and learning. She spoke of her father's business ventures and their comfortable life before the financial disaster, though she still couldn't bring herself to mention the circumstances of his death. As the days passed, Olivia became increasingly aware of Adam's presence, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, the gentle strength in his hands as he worked, the thoughtful way he listened when she spoke. She found herself looking forward to their conversations, to the brief moments when their fingers would touch as she handed him a coffee cup, or he helped her down from Juniper after a ride. For his part, Adam seemed equally affected. He began finding reasons to be near the cabin during the day, brought wildflowers he'd found while riding his range, and took special care to provide extra comforts for both Olivia and her uncle. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the distant mountains in shades of gold and purple, Adam turned to her with unusual seriousness. "Your uncle's getting stronger," he said. "Soon he'll be well enough to travel to your land." "Yes," Olivia agreed, feeling a strange reluctance at the thought of leaving. "Dr. Goodfellow says perhaps another week." Adam nodded, picking up a stick to draw aimlessly in the dirt at his feet. "The thing is, Olivia," he began, then paused as if gathering his courage. "The thing is, I've grown accustomed to having you here, more than accustomed." He looked up, meeting her gaze directly. "I'd miss you something fierce if you left." Olivia's heart quickened. "I'd miss you too, Adam. Would you consider?" He cleared his throat. "That is, I know we haven't known each other long, but sometimes a person just knows when something's right." "Adam Carson, are you proposing to me?" Olivia asked, amazed at her own boldness. He grinned, the tension broken. "I reckon I am, though I'm making a hash of it." He took her hand in his. "Olivia Mitchell, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I can't offer much besides this cabin and some hard work, but I promise to be a good husband to you and to help your uncle build his place too." Olivia looked into his earnest face, this man who had saved her life, who had shown such kindness to her and her uncle, who had awakened feelings in her she'd never experienced before. The answer came easily, naturally. "Yes, Adam, I will marry you." His smile was like the sunrise, brilliant and full of promise. He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished, then pressed his lips to hers in a gentle kiss that sealed their commitment. When they told Frederick their news the next morning, he seemed unsurprised. "I've seen the way you two look at each other," he said with a knowing smile. "Adam's a good man, Livy. Your father would have approved." Plans were made quickly. They would marry in Tombstone, where Frederick's land was located, as soon as he was well enough to travel there. Adam would help them establish their homestead, and Olivia would split her time between both properties until they decided on a more permanent arrangement. A week later, Frederick demonstrated his ability to navigate with his new crutch, and Dr. Goodfellow, who had returned to check on his patient, pronounced him fit for travel. They would leave for Tombstone the following day. That evening, a visitor arrived at the cabin, a ranch hand from the Lazy S, where some of the flood survivors had found temporary work. He brought grave news. Cholera had broken out in Tombstone. Several people had already died, and the town was under quarantine. "Doc Goodfellow's needed back there urgently," the cowboy explained. "And they're not letting anyone in or out of town for at least a month, maybe longer." Their plans suddenly upended. Olivia, Adam, and Frederick reassessed their situation. Frederick's land would have to wait. "You're welcome to stay here," Adam told them without hesitation. "We can use the time to prepare, gather supplies for when you do move to your place." "And perhaps," Frederick suggested with a twinkle in his eye, "you two could use this time to get to know each other better before the wedding." The next month passed in a flurry of activity. Adam taught Olivia to shoot, a necessary skill for any frontier woman. She proved a quick study, her steady hands and keen eye making her a natural marksman. Frederick, determined not to be a burden, learned to manage many tasks despite his missing leg, including repairing tack and even some woodworking while seated. Together, they expanded the garden, built a chicken coop, and began construction on a small addition to the cabin to give them more space. Adam showed Olivia the boundaries of his ranch, the best fishing spots along the creek, and the hidden valley where wildflowers bloomed in profusion. Their feelings for each other deepened with each passing day. What had begun as attraction and admiration grew into genuine love, tested by the challenges of frontier life and strengthened by their shared values and goals. When news finally came that the cholera epidemic had run its course and Tombstone was open again, they made plans once more for their wedding and the move to Frederick's land. The day before they were to depart, however, a late summer thunderstorm rolled in from the mountains, dropping torrential rain that turned the normally placid creek into a raging river once more. Standing on the porch, watching the rain with trepidation, Olivia felt Adam's arm slip around her waist. "It's nothing like the flash flood that brought you to me," he assured her. "The creek can handle this much water without overflowing." "Still, it brings back memories," Olivia admitted, leaning into his embrace. "Good ones, I hope," Adam said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "If not for that flood, we might never have met." Olivia turned in his arms to face him. "In that case, I'm almost grateful for it." Almost. The journey to Tombstone the next day took longer than expected due to muddy trails, but they arrived by late afternoon. The town bustled with activity despite the recent epidemic, its main street lined with businesses ranging from saloons to dry goods stores, a hotel, and even a small theater. They checked into the Grand Hotel, taking 2 adjoining rooms, one for Frederick and one for Olivia, with Adam making arrangements to stay at a boarding house down the street. Proper appearances had to be maintained, after all, at least until the wedding. The next morning, they paid a visit to Dr. Goodfellow, both to check on Frederick's healing and to inquire about marriage requirements. The doctor, pleased with Frederick's progress, directed them to Judge Wells for the legal aspects of matrimony. "Nothing simpler," the judge assured them when they visited his office. "Got the license right here. Fill it out, pay the fee, and I can perform the ceremony whenever you're ready. Need witnesses, of course." "How about tomorrow afternoon?" Adam suggested, looking to Olivia for confirmation. She nodded, her heart light with anticipation. "Tomorrow it is," the judge said, making a note in his appointment book. 3 o'clock suit you? I've got a claim dispute at 1. With the wedding arranged, they turned their attention to Frederick's land. Located 5 miles outside town, the property consisted of 40 acres with a small, somewhat dilapidated cabin, a well, and a fenced corral. The previous owner had started clearing fields but had given up and moved to California after 2 dry years made farming difficult. "It needs work," Frederick acknowledged as they surveyed the place, "but the bones are good. Good water, good soil in that bottom section, and plenty of room for a garden and some livestock. We'll make it habitable before winter sets in," Adam promised. "And you can always come back to my place if needed." They spent the remainder of the day making a list of necessary repairs and supplies. By the time they returned to Tombstone, they had a clear plan for the work ahead. That evening, Frederick insisted on treating them to dinner at the Grand Hotel's restaurant, the finest establishment in Tombstone. A pre-wedding celebration, he called it. As they dined on surprisingly good steaks and potatoes, Frederick raised his glass in a toast. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "and to finding family in unexpected places." Adam and Olivia clinked their glasses against his, both moved by the sentiment. They were indeed forming a new kind of family, one born of adversity and resilience. After dinner, Adam escorted Olivia on a short walk down Tombstone's boardwalk before returning her to the hotel. Outside her door, he kissed her with a gentle passion that promised more to come after they were wed. "Until tomorrow, Miss Mitchell," he said, his voice husky. "Until tomorrow, Mr. Carson," she replied with a smile that carried all her love and anticipation. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, with just enough breeze to temper the September heat. Olivia spent the morning with Mrs. Cooper, who had settled in Tombstone after the flood and insisted on helping the bride prepare. "Every woman deserves someone to fuss over her on her wedding day," Mrs. Cooper declared, arranging Olivia's hair in an elegant style adorned with small white flowers. For her dress, Olivia wore a new blue skirt and white blouse purchased from the mercantile, not traditional bridal attire, but the finest clothes available on short notice. Adam had insisted on buying her a gold locket as a wedding gift, which now hung around her neck, containing a small photograph of her parents that had somehow survived the flood. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful. Judge Wells officiated in his office, with Frederick giving the bride away and the Coopers serving as witnesses. Adam, dressed in a new white shirt and black vest, his hair neatly combed, looked at Olivia with such love that she felt her heart might burst with happiness. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the judge declared after they'd exchanged simple vows and rings, plain gold bands purchased from the town jeweler. "You may kiss your bride." Adam's kiss was tender yet powerful, a promise of all they would share in the years to come. When they turned to face their small audience, Frederick was wiping tears from his eyes, and even Mr. Cooper looked suspiciously misty. A small reception followed at the hotel, with a special dinner, and a cake Mrs. Cooper had arranged with the hotel cook. Several townspeople whom Frederick had met during his previous visits to Tombstone dropped by to offer congratulations, as did Dr. Goodfellow. As the evening wound down, Adam leaned close to his new wife. "I've taken a room at the hotel for tonight," he whispered. "Your uncle said we deserve at least one night of privacy before heading back to work on the homestead." Olivia blushed but nodded, equal parts nervous and excited about the night ahead. When they finally bid their guests good night and retired to their room, she found that Adam had arranged for a bottle of champagne and flowers to be waiting. "I know it's not much of a honeymoon," he said apologetically. "Someday, when we're more established, I'll take you to San Francisco or even back east if you wish." "This is perfect," Olivia assured him, standing on tiptoe to kiss him softly. "I don't need grand hotels or exotic locations. I just need you." Their wedding night was everything Olivia had hoped for: tender, passionate, and filled with discoveries as they learned each other in this new, intimate way. Adam was gentle and considerate, guiding her through the initial discomfort to find pleasure she hadn't known was possible. Afterward, lying in his arms as moonlight filtered through the lace curtains, Olivia felt a contentment that went bone deep. Whatever hardships lay ahead, and frontier life guaranteed there would be many, they would face them together. The next morning, they joined Frederick for breakfast, before loading supplies into the wagon Adam had purchased. It wasn't new, but it was sturdy, with a fresh canvas cover and strong wheels. They would live at Frederick's homestead for the first few weeks to make it habitable, then split their time between the two properties as needed. The work was hard but satisfying. Adam and Olivia repaired the cabin's roof and walls while Frederick, working from a chair when his leg pained him, crafted furniture and organized their supplies. They dug a new privy, cleaned out the choked well, and cleared fields of stones and brush. News came that the remaining survivors of the Wagon train had formed a small community about 20 miles south, naming their settlement New Hope. The Wilsons, whom Frederick had seen during the flood, had indeed survived, all except Mr. Wilson, whose body was found miles downstream days after the disaster. As October turned to November, both properties were ready for winter. They established a routine: 3 days at Adam's ranch tending the cattle and other livestock, 4 days at Frederick's place, where they had planted a late garden and begun building corrals for the horses and milk cow they planned to acquire in spring. Frederick's resilience continued to impress them. He fashioned an ingenious wooden leg that, while crude, allowed him much more mobility than the crutch. He became skilled at leather working, repairing their harnesses and creating useful items they could trade in town for necessities. Winter arrived with a vengeance in December, bringing snow and frigid temperatures that kept them mostly indoors. These quiet days and long evenings provided time for Olivia to teach Adam to read more fluently. He'd had little formal education while he taught her the practical skills of frontier survival. Frederick entertained them with stories of his younger days, including adventures during the California gold rush of '49. On Christmas morning, Adam presented Olivia with a handcrafted rocking chair, its wood polished to a warm glow. "For when the children come," he said softly, his eyes conveying his hope for their future family. Olivia's gift to him was news that made the rocking chair immediately relevant. She was expecting their first child, due in early summer. The announcement brought tears to Adam's eyes as he gathered her in his arms, his hand gently resting on her still flat stomach. Frederick, watching from his chair by the fire, beamed with pride and joy. "A little Carson," he said wonderingly. "Your parents would be so happy, Livy." The winter months passed in a blend of daily work and anticipation. Olivia's body changed as the child grew within her, and Adam's protective instincts intensified. He insisted on handling more of the strenuous chores, though Olivia reminded him frequently that pregnancy was natural, not an illness. When spring arrived, bringing new grass and wildflowers to the high desert, they began expanding both homesteads in earnest. Adam hired 2 ranch hands to help with his growing herd of cattle, while at Frederick's place, they added a proper barn and expanded the garden to include fruit trees and berry bushes. In May, they received unexpected visitors, Mrs. Wilson and her 3 children, traveling from the New Hope settlement. They brought news, supplies, and friendship, staying for 2 days before continuing on to California, where Mrs. Wilson's sister lived. "The flood took James from us," she told Olivia as they sat shelling peas on the porch, "but it also showed me my own strength. I never knew I could manage alone, make decisions for our family. Now I know I can." Olivia understood completely. The same disaster that had nearly claimed her life had led her to Adam and to a deeper understanding of her own capabilities. As Olivia's time drew near, they relocated primarily to Adam's ranch, which was closer to Tombstone should medical help be needed. Frederick divided his time between the 2 properties, happily tending the gardens and livestock while Adam focused on preparing for the baby's arrival. On a sweltering July morning, Olivia's labor began. Adam rode frantically to Tombstone for Dr. Goodfellow, but the baby refused to wait. By the time they returned, Frederick had helped Olivia deliver a healthy, robust son with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue eyes. "I thought we might name him Frederick James," Olivia suggested when Adam knelt beside the bed, awestruck by the tiny bundle in his wife's arms. "After my uncle and your father." "Frederick James Carson," Adam repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "It's perfect." Dr. Goodfellow confirmed that both mother and child were doing well, complimenting Frederick on his unexpected midwifery skills. "You missed your calling, Mitchell," he joked. "Should have been a doctor." Life adjusted to accommodate little Freddie's needs. Olivia found that motherhood came naturally to her, and Adam proved to be an attentive, doting father who thought nothing of walking the floor with a fussy infant or changing soiled diapers. Frederick delighted in his role as granduncle, crafting wooden toys for the baby and singing old sailing songs from his youth to lull the child to sleep. The three adults formed a cohesive unit, each contributing their strengths to their shared life. By Freddie's first birthday, both homesteads were thriving. Adam's cattle herd had doubled, and he'd added sheep as well, their wool bringing a good price in Tombstone. Frederick's place boasted the finest vegetable garden in the county, with enough produce to sell the surplus to merchants in town. Olivia, balancing motherhood with her contribution to their livelihoods, had started a small business making preserves and jams from the fruits and berries they grew, her products becoming sought after throughout the territory. She also began teaching reading and basic arithmetic to the children of neighboring ranchers once a week, fulfilling her love of education. As the years passed, their family grew. A daughter, Catherine, joined them 2 years after Freddie, followed by twin boys, Samuel and Joseph, 3 years later. Each child brought new joy and challenges, and the Carson home expanded to accommodate their growing family. Frederick remained an integral part of their lives, though as he aged, he spent more time at Adam's ranch than at his own homestead. By the time the twins were toddlers, they had officially moved him into the expanded family home permanently, renting out his property to a young couple starting their own journey west. The flash flood that had nearly claimed Olivia's life became a story told to their children, a testament to fate's strange workings and the resilience of the human spirit. When Freddie asked, as children inevitably do, how his parents had met, Adam would always begin the tale the same way. "It was the worst storm I'd ever seen, rain coming down in sheets, thunder shaking the mountains. I was tracking a mountain lion when I heard something strange over the roar of the flood waters, a woman's voice, calling for help. And there was your mother, clinging to a cottonwood tree in the middle of a raging torrent, holding on with more strength and courage than anyone I'd ever met." At this point, Olivia would always catch Adam's eye across the room, their shared look conveying all the love and gratitude that had grown from that desperate moment for the life they'd built together, the family they'd created, and the love that had flourished in the harsh but beautiful Arizona wilderness. 10 years after the flood, Tombstone had grown into a prosperous silver mining town, its streets now lined with substantial buildings, and its population swelled by miners, merchants, and settlers. The Carson family had prospered as well, their combined properties now forming one of the most successful ranches in the territory. On the anniversary of their wedding, Adam took Olivia back to the cottonwood tree that had saved her life during the flood. It still stood, though the creek that had nearly claimed her now flowed peacefully within its banks. "I come here sometimes," Adam admitted, his arm around her waist as they gazed at the gnarled trunk, "when I need to remember how precious life is, how quickly everything can change." "It's where our story began," Olivia said softly, leaning into his strength, "though I wouldn't recommend it as a conventional way to meet one's future husband." Adam laughed, the sound as warm and familiar to her now as her own heartbeat. "Nothing about us has ever been conventional, Mrs. Carson. And I wouldn't have it any other way." They stood together as the setting sun painted the landscape gold, silhouetting the tree that had brought them together against the vast Arizona sky. The hardships they'd faced, floods and droughts, illnesses and injuries, the normal trials of frontier life had only strengthened the bond between them, a love forged in adversity and tempered by shared purpose and joy. "Neither would I," Olivia agreed, turning to kiss the man who had pulled her from raging waters into a life more fulfilling than she could have imagined. "Neither would I."